Hi, so welcome to Sacred Business Stories. This is our weekly Substack Live where really we just have an honest conversation about what it looks like to build a business that aligns with your deepest truth. And today we are joined, and we're excited to be joined by our friend, Billy Broas. He is the author of Simple Marketing for Smart People, creator of the Five Lightbulbs framework, which we love around Sacred Business Flow. And recently, actually, I'm excited to learn a little bit more about this as well. He just launched a brand new publication here on Substack called Fractal Faith. And so, yeah, welcome, Billy. We're excited to have this conversation with you.
Hey, thanks, Phil. Thank you, Carolina. Yeah, I love speaking with you both, and it's been a while, so I'm excited for this.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us. And we like to open up for the audience to ask questions. So we try to play with the chat as much as we can. And I always like to remind ourselves, to remind people listening and our guests here why we created Secret Business Stories. And it's purely for inspiration. We all, not all, but we often have like a desire in our heart, like a calling that we want to follow. And sometimes we want to turn into that a business. And we admire people out there that have like successful business like you. And we don't know the behind the scenes. Like we just see what we see right now. And we don't know what it took you to, restart the journey and be where you are today. So just to tell people, like, it doesn't matter where you are, you can always begin. And we would love to hear your story, and you take us like the way you want it, like the most important things for you, like how you started the journey and how you became who you are right now in your business.
Yeah, happy to. Yeah, and I love how well too. I mean, we work together on your messaging for Sacred Business Flow, and the phrase that just really stuck out, I think, to all of us, and that sticks with me today, is everything is connected. I love that phrase that you guys use. I love your manifesto, and I think that's a good place to kick it off, because I've really gone between a lot of different industries. I mean, I started off in college. I started in biotechnology. Then I went to renewable energy. My career was in renewable energy. I left that job. I went into beer brewing, home beer brewing of all things, teaching home beer brewing courses, to then marketing. And then, even as Phil alluded to, now faith. Like, those are very different, right? Like energy, beer, marketing, faith. Right?
The
Like
whole spectrum.
all over the freaking place. But our key phrase, right? Everything is connected. Everything is connected. And so that's really been my journey. There's a lot of things I'm really not good at. Just ask my wife. But pattern finding, like seeing the patterns between things, seeing the commonalities, is one of those things like I thought everyone could do, because it just came so easily to me. And I'm sure your listeners have that. You guys have that thing that you just do so naturally. You're like, oh yeah. Like, I was just listening to I've gotten really into Charlie Puth, the artist. Laura and I saw him kick off his tour, the musician. And he was talking about this, like when he was like 10 years old, he sat down at the piano at church because the person was sick, and he had just heard all the songs from being there. And he sat down and just played the whole service by ear. And he's like, but you guys heard the songs too. You could do this as well. Right? Of course, right? That's his gift. So for me, it's seeing these different patterns between things. And I just love bringing that, like being a translator for people. That's really how I see myself, is as a translator. My day job is making the complex accessible. And I do that by pointing out these patterns. And when people see that, it's relief when you could see that. You say, oh yeah, this thing is showing up in this area of my life, and then also this area of my life as well. It brings some sense to the universe in a time where things can seem very senseless.
Oh, I think I lagged for a moment. Can you guys hear me?
I got you. Yeah, I was done. I don't know if you guys caught that.
Cool. Yeah, no, on my screen skipped a little bit, so my apologies. But yeah, I mean, I think for me, that's something I've definitely really appreciated about you, and it's also something that I think is so important, and it's something I think we also provide for our clients. But I found so valuable about working with you was exactly what you said. When you're in something, whatever it might be, for us, like when we were starting to build out our messaging for Sacred Business Flow, there were a lot of things we did know. There were a lot of things we could see, but we're so close to it that it can become really challenging sometimes to kind of understand where you are in that and to not get lost in it. And so I found that, that you brought a tremendous amount of value to that. It seems to me that that's what you've been doing throughout this whole journey. And even like when I looked at your publication, recently, I started looking at it. It seems like it's kind of the same theme, right? Like you're taking some pretty complicated stuff, if depending on how you orient, and you're kind of breaking it up and looking at it for some different angles, it's really a gift that you have. So thank you I know for me personally, just giving you a lot of thanks, because it was a huge, I attribute a lot of what we were able to do in a pretty short amount of time on this platform to that clarity we got like early on, doing that work with you.
Yeah, it was an honor. It's extremely rewarding when someone has that in them, like you guys did, and they're just too close to it. And I suffer from this as well. Right, that's something I got to work on too. And I have people who help me with that, drawing it out of me. But it's very rewarding to draw that out of someone, and like you guys, and show it to you and say, "Hey, here's your story that you weren't even seeing." So yeah, thank you. Yeah,
Mhm.
loved it.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
and
one thing
oh,
that I really like the way you shared, it's like I simplify complex things for people to understand, and connected a little bit with like the thing that you're writing right now and faith and all of that. Like I heard once that like the truth is simple. And then like I try to bring that to everything in my life. Like it doesn't mean that I can do it always, but how do you translate that to your own business? Just a little bit of like, in the behind the scenes, the process of like making decisions, because your brain, well, or the way I'm perceiving, like, because the framework that you created to
mm,
explain marketing to people is so simple that even me coming from like yoga, energetics, like having zero knowledge of marketing, like many years ago, and when we first met, like I'm like, this is so easy. This makes so much sense. So how do you apply that like in your business on a daily basis? If you do, or if you see a correlation there?
Yeah, and I love seeing that because, yeah, like you like so many people. I remember Caroline, you just picked it up quickly and said, "Oh yeah, here's how I can apply that to what I'm doing." So it's one of those intuitive things, but it's also one of those things where it's simplicity on the other side of complexity. And like I said, my background is not in marketing, and when I first got into it to sell those home beer brewing courses for $47 and try to leave my really good career in the energy industry, I was like, how the heck do I do this? Right? Like, how do I sell these? I had my MBA. I was like, I'm a business dude, right? I can definitely sell these beer brewing courses, but man, it was really hard, right? I could do like advanced finance, but I couldn't sell these courses online. So I fell into the usual stuff. I mean, just trying to, because I'm on the Colby score. I'm very high on fact finding. Like I like to do the research first, to a fault. And so I was doing that with online marketing, but it was just, but especially around that time, Phil, I know you remember around 2008, 2009, right when blogging was taking off and social media
mhm.
was taking off, YouTube, everything. It was just like drinking out of a fire hose. And I just got super overwhelmed by it all and just couldn't keep up. And so, but I was still working. I was still in the trenches running my own business, the beer brewing business. That finally did allow me to leave the job. And then I really fell in love with the marketing side and helping other people, other domain experts, subject matter experts with their marketing, and just seeing that all that crap just doesn't matter. All those channels that they're telling you to be on, all those tactics, all the software they want you to use. Again, coming from the energy industry, it's all about leverage. You're always trying. We work with cars and automobiles. We're trying to get more miles per gallon, more energy out of the power plant, right? For every ounce of fuel that we put in. And so I just took that mindset into marketing and said, what's the one thing that makes the biggest difference? And the answer was obvious. Just after having had enough reps in and successful launches, failed launches, and the whole thing, and it was messaging, the words.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's I know. I wonder how many people that are like in kind of career marketers actually didn't start as marketers, because that's my story too. I got into this. I was working in tech, and then my partner at the time was opening a private practice, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna see how could it look to attract more clients and more patients to this practice. And then, just like you, I kind of fell in love with that whole process. But it's interesting. For me, coming from a tech background, I definitely got caught up in all the tech and the software and all that. And yeah, that's one of the things I was kind of known for early on, but like, and I do use all that stuff to create leverage, but I did have to have this kind of big correction where I kind of learned, and you were actually someone who was very influential on me in that way of like getting down to the fundamentals. And yeah, you're absolutely right. The fundamentals for most people, especially when they're just getting started, is in the message. And so yeah, I would love to hear more about that, or how you could expand on that, because yeah, I see this as, and I think there's a lot of reasons why people put the focus in other areas. And sometimes I think it's from a true sense of belief that that is the right thing. There's a lot of people selling the tactics, selling the quick wins because they're quite honestly easier to sell. But then also I think there's like patterns of procrastination and resistance. Because the minute you kind of start getting this messaging going, it's like, okay, now I have to show up and own that. And so, yeah, I'm just curious, like anything else you might have to say around that topic.
Yeah, it certainly does sell better, and I'm sure, and that's always been something I wrestled with. It's not, like now I'm the philosophy marketer guy. That's not quite as sexy as like the latest AI thing, right? And I've had a lot of frustration around that. It's like, hey, but the thing that I've made is so good, and it's so much truth to it, and it's so deep and so evergreen. It's like, why are you buying the Clubhouse courses when you could be buying the messaging course, right? But I get it, right? And I bought those things too. So yeah, it is both, right? And that's certainly, and look, and the tactics matter. I think you're also kind of a freak of nature, Phil, in that you can hold these things in your head, like these systems, these online marketing. Caroline, is he like that? He can hold these amazing systems in his head and kind of know where everything is going and how things are flowing. I think it's a very rare skill. That said, of course, like it can be only compounded by having the messaging side, which you've gotten so strong at recently. But I envy you on that side, on being able to create what looks like controlled chaos from all those sticks and pipes and everything.
Yeah, it's and then, yeah, for me, I still have to be really careful because that's still the part that's fun for me. I can sit back there and just like tweak all day, and then lose sight of the bigger work. But I'm curious. Another question I'd love to ask you um, is, you've been in this for a long time. You've gone through a lot of transitions where you've kind of you've moved from the beer brewing to the marketing and different flavors of that, and one of the things that we like to convey to our audience is that in this kind of like entrepreneurial journey, it's perfectly normal to have fear and resistance coming up, especially if the things you're doing are something that are close to you or meaningful to you. And so I'm curious, where does that, and I'm curious, maybe even right now, this is in the coaching world. And I know we've had offline conversations about AI and all the things changing, but like, where's an area that fear resistance shows up for you? And what kind of work do you do to kind of keep moving forward when you're kind of in that uncertainty of direction, or like where you've been, or maybe like when you've been making a shift in your business? That's a big one.
Mm. One thing that was really scary early on was when I left the energy industry. I had built up a decent amount of revenue on the side from the beer business. Not a ton, but almost equal to what I was making in that salary. I think I was making like $70,000 a year from that job, which was a lot when I was like right out of college. Man, I thought I was crushing it. And I was like, okay, if I can get the beer business up to that amount and then have some in savings, I want to say I saved up like $100,000 over the years, maybe like 7 years, right? Because not paying anything for rent really where I was. It was great. And I was like, okay, perfect time to leave. And then my calculation was, well, 40 hours more free per week, not having that career. I mean, I was just working on the beer thing at night. Imagine if I put that many hours into the beer thing is going to take off. And it didn't happen. It wasn't like that movie, right, that you see where it's like, finally I snapped the chain of oppression and I'm a bird just taking off into the sky. No, and it didn't crash either. It was kind of like an entrepreneur's worst nightmare where it just kind of stalled out. And I remember
Mm.
that was a really scary moment because I was like, "Oh crap, should I have left that job?"
Oh, so this was after you'd actually fully left. I see. Okay. Yeah. So you started the thing while you were still working, or did you kind of
Oh
take
yeah,
the leap and start the, yeah, yeah. So
no,
you
no, no.
started while you
I was working on the side for years.
okay. Okay.
Yeah, that was that's another thing too. Is like you see all these cliche stories. It's like, yeah, and people making these promises like give the finger to your boss and say I'm out of there and just live the 9 to 5, the 4-hour work week. It's like I really like my boss. I liked his family. We would eat together. Like I like my coworkers. I like my industry. If it was worse there, maybe I would have been more motivated to leave early. But I wrestled with that as well. It's like I actually, I do like this, but eventually I did. It was a small company. The internet was taken off. I felt really tied down. I felt really like there was really a ceiling above me in that company, all these things I was missing out on. And so, yeah, I don't regret it. I'm glad I didn't know at the time how hard it would be being on my own. That's for sure. I don't know if I would have done it. But looking back on it now, that was 29. Now I'm 41. Yeah, glad I did it.
Yeah. So you took you got the thing up and running while you're still working. You took the leap. You thought, it was just going to keep kind of moving and soaring, and you kind of just stalled out. So yeah, maybe kind of walk me through what was going through your head at that time, and kind of how did you kind of keep moving forward and keep your own sanity, keep yourself grounded, and ultimately, how did you kind of move through that to kind of whatever your next level was?
Yeah, and it stalled out for multiple reasons. I mean, one of the things was, and this has been a downfall of mine, is that I lose interest in it. And after doing it for so long, and especially being exposed to the online stuff, because the beer thing brought me online. Now I'm online. Oh, there's all this cool online marketing stuff and Twitter and YouTube and all this. So that became the new shiny object. And then, believe it or not, you run a beer website, you get tired of drinking beer all the time. And I was trying to,
I can see that.
I was trying to get into shape. I was like really into fitness, and I felt obligated. And homebrewing is a lot of work, so I started to resent it because I felt obligated. It's like, okay, trying to be healthy this week, but I got to review this 12% imperial stout and do a video on it. Or, this thing's 600 calories in a 12-ounce bottle. Or I have to brew this batch of beer and record the whole thing. So it started to ruin the hobby for me, having that be the thing that was paying the bills. And I really didn't like that. And then also, I mean, this was outside my control. Definitely not the only reason, but the industry started to suffer. This is when craft breweries started to really take off because all these home brewers were saying, well, why am I going to do it myself when I could just go next door and buy the thing instead of putting in all this blood, sweat, and tears? And so my traffic started to drop at the same time. So all these things kind of compounded. And I just really wasn't that into it anymore, but also kind of panicking because, I mean, that was my main revenue. So what I did was, to answer your question, I early on through one of the online marketing forums, this was through Copy Blogger. If you remember Copy Blogger, Brian Clark.
Yeah, we just had Brian Clark on I think 2 weeks
Did he
ago. He was
really?
on the show here. Yeah, it was an incredible interview. Yeah.
Yeah, he rocks. Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
like yeah, yeah, and he attracted in the early days of Copy Blogger and the Third Tribe, really good people. So I met some people through there, and even people who had much bigger websites than mine, but they were in these very niche industries. Like one of the early ones I worked with had a website for vegan and plant-based athletes that was much bigger than mine. And but I said, hey, like here's some marketing stuff I learned. Here's some copywriting stuff I learned. You can tweak this, rewrite this headline, put an opt-in right here. Start to get results. So as the beer ship was kind of sinking, the online marketing plane was taking off.
That's cool.
That's really nice. Like right now you're writing, and I'm reading your stuff and you're talking about faith and all of that. How do you see the evolution of your relationship with faith and your ability to keep going and following the signs of life? Like, hey, this is going down, but there's something here that's going up. And I just need to keep following, I don't know how you call it, like the signs or what's working. And, like this is not fulfilling anymore. And now I'm looking to this direction without being distracted because you have a very solid business right now. So I don't think, maybe I'm wrong, but you're not the one that is always looking for the shiny object. Like you're very grounded, your work is very grounded. And how do you relate with like faith maybe a couple of years ago and you understand it right now?
There are certainly more of those shiny objects kind of buried in the backyard than you guys know about. Trust me, they're out there, right? Those false starts. This is going to be the best newsletter in the world. And then 3 weeks into it, I'm like, that was a bad idea. Shouldn't have started that. Shouldn't have done that. Hope no one really paid attention to that one. But yeah, I mean, faith. Yeah, that's definitely not a word that was on my radar until about 6 years ago. Although I would say I was exhibiting it, but I wouldn't use that term. I've always been pretty persistent and maybe stubborn. I just don't give up, and so even like when things got really dark and really tough, and it has been a tough ride. Um, when I was going through like a really hard time back like 2019, 2020, I would say I had an older mentor who I was talking to, a guy I respect a lot, and and he was saying, and he went through something like really really tough, like much tougher than I went through. And he said, "You know what I do is, there's this old Christmas movie. You guys might have seen it. It's like this claymation Christmas movie. I forget the name. And there's a little character, and they sing that song. Just put one foot in front of the other. Just put one foot in front of the other." And he said he would watch that like every morning while he was going through that. And that's kind of always been my approach. Is like just okay, just get up, do the thing, put in the work. At the end of the day, you did the best you can, and then go to bed and try again the next day. So kind of like a stoicism sort of philosophy, operating philosophy towards life. And then of course, like I said, about like 6 years ago, the real faith, the whole the Christian side of things came in, and I was finally able to ground it in something.
It's very nice that you're mentioning this because I think, and it's one of the reasons why we like to have conversations like this because often like what you're gonna put on social media is everything that's working for you, right? Like when the project is already like up there, when people are like already celebrating, when you reach a certain level of success, and then when you go into this journey, you're like, that's not easy. Like there is like very, like there's not one dark night of the soul. There's like many dark nights of the soul. There's many moments that you're like, what's happening? Like, where do I go? And sometimes I feel that it's just such like a lonely journey because I feel very few people are open to, or yeah, like to share, like the reality behind. And eventually like it kicks off and it goes and it makes it's easier. But I just appreciate that you're sharing. And also like, yes, I do have shiny objects and it didn't work. And I just hope that people didn't see it and whatever it is. But I kept going and it's always like one step at a time.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's one of those things, right? Like that the whole idea of suffering and being in that dark place and in that pit. Like, who wants suffering? I mean, if you could order it off a menu, you would say, nope, no, thank you. I will not take any of that in my life. But at the same time, and you guys would probably agree, like, I am a better person, a stronger person because of the suffering I've been through.
I agree 100%. Yeah. I think, at least for myself, like most of my let goes and transformation on my own identity and ways of being that were like unhelpful or clinging too much onto something came through like hard situations and pain that like there's no, I don't know, options. And right now I just need to let go the part of me that thinks that should be different. So I think there's a lot of
Mm,
reward in that transformation.
for sure.
Mhm. And just before we get to the next serious topic, to put you on the spot, what has been your most recent shiny object?
My most recent shiny object. I've gotten much more disciplined about it. I did have, kind of before Fractal Faith, I had another idea for a newsletter because I just started my family recently. I got married 4 years ago, and I have two kids now, and so I started like a dad newsletter, and that was the main one I was referring to, and that didn't last too long, maybe a few months, and I was like, nah, let's put that down. But again, having gone through that experience, it was on the right path. It was a precursor for Fractal Faith. It was just a lot more. I just had to wait a little bit more and synthesize things more. But it's a lot more whole now. It's a lot more complete. So sometimes you do something
Mhm.
like that, right? And you had to get through that to then see what the real thing you're supposed to do is lurking on the other side of that quote unquote failure.
Yeah, I think this is something we talk a lot about, is even with our clients that are trying to get something off the ground. It's so often it's through the doing that they're going to learn what even when they come and they're like, I have this idea, something I want to create, and it feels really alive for me. It's still kind of being intellectualized, right? And it's not until there's all those studies that say that our brains are, I couldn't quote it, but our brains are really bad at knowing what we actually want. And so then it's really through the doing that you start to fine tune and be like, oh yeah, I really actually love this aspect, but this part, I'd love to be doing that different. And we've had clients that have had, huge pivots, in the process and started to build really, really cool things, but it was like completely different than what they initially started with. So yeah, I totally resonate with what you're saying there. And yeah, just to talk more about the fractal faith. Yeah, can you share a little bit more about the inspiration for that, or kind of how you knew that this was something you wanted to bring into reality, and kind of what your current thinking is in terms of where you're hoping to take it?
Yeah. So again, that phrase, everything is connected. I'm a very integrated thinker, and I can't really isolate my beliefs. I can't say, okay, well, I'm going to believe and practice this thing in this one area of my life, maybe marketing, and then this other area of my life, my personal life, I'm going to think and behave like this. And so with marketing, I started to ask these questions because I think all of us who have done marketing, especially when you have to market something really personal like yourself or your coaching practice, you get those feels, you get those often uncomfortable feels, and you're like, this just feels kind of weird. And you see a lot of the advice out there telling you what to do, and you're like, that seems like strange advice. And so I started to notice that really all the advice that we get really comes from this one school of thought. And I describe us as the fish that are born into water that don't know that they're in water. Just what we were born into, which is all we know, all we accept, and all we think there is. And so it's this area of reductionism, which is really reducing something down to its parts. And you hear that all the time in marketing. Like so much of the advice out there assumes that people are just neurons and chemicals and like bundles of wires to be hacked. And so you hear things like, yeah, spike their dopamine or press that emotional hop button. Right? It's this very scientific way of looking at the world. And hey, my background is in science. Like I said, I got started in biotechnology. I love science, and it's phenomenal for studying the physical world and coming up with solutions. The things that can solve a lot of problems that we have. But humans are different, right? We are not lab rats. We're not matter. We're not this desk that I'm sitting at. And we should be treated with dignity. And that's the big thing that I saw that was missing. So much of the marketing just completely strips human dignity away from people. Like when you treat someone like they're a bundle of chemicals and you talk about hacking their neurons, it's like you've taken away their dignity. And you've also taken away their agency. This is something you guys talk about, like which is free will and the power of having a choice. Because what you're trying to do with that, all that marketing advice is trying to do, like triggering their cognitive biases, is you're trying to bypass their agency, their ability to choose. You're hoping that their biology takes over and they hit buy before they actually have to think about what you just said. And so, and a lot of people justify it by saying, well, that's what works, right? And you have to ask, well, what does works mean? Okay, it makes money. Okay, well, it might make money in the short term, but are those people those customers you acquire by hacking their brain chemicals going to be the customers that stick around forever and keep buying from you and refer you? No. And Phil, you've been behind the scenes of a lot of these businesses that grow that way based on all these psychological hacks. And they might show a spike in revenue for a couple of weeks, but then, check in a few months later and you just see a ton of refunds.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So even that argument that it works better, I don't buy that at all. Especially if you're in it for the long term, like I think all of us on this call are. So that was one stopping point for me, was saying, well, okay, I see what it's doing wrong is stripping away people of their agency and their human dignity, and really their free will. It's trying to bypass their free will. But then, being the digger that I am, I kept digging and saying, well, why is that important? Like, why do we assume that humans have human dignity? Why are humans not just bundles of chemicals? Because if you assume that humans are just chemicals, then really you're totally reasonable in treating people like that, right? Like machines to be programmed. And then, so that question of where does that dignity come from? And then that's where I'd been on this other journey, a parallel journey, probably all the same journey, of being born Catholic, growing up really atheist, agnostic, trying all the things, Stoicism, New Age, humanism, you name it. And then eventually coming back to Christianity, and we can talk more about that if we want. Well, that also provided the grounding for that belief that humans should be treated with human dignity. And it comes from the Christian belief in Imago Dei. We're made in the image of God. And he made us in a way that gave us through love. And with love, you always have the freedom to choose. Like God didn't program us. He gave us the choice. right? So that provided that, let's call it the metaphysical foundation for that belief that humans are born with inherent dignity. And therefore, we should treat humans like that, regardless of what works. How we treat them and what we assume about people comes first.
I truly appreciate this conversation, and the reason why it touches me like deeply is because for the first 3 years of my business, I rejected marketing for this exact reason, that like what we mostly see out there is people treating people not as humans. It's like the results are like money no matter what. Like it doesn't matter like if I need that, but I'm gonna make you believe that you do. And it's like trying to control people with like fear and the language that like makes you feel that you're missing out. No matter how much you buy, no matter how much you do, you're always missing out because you're being bombarded with like information. And the first and then I was kind of like, it's impossible that there is just that in the marketing world or the business world. Like I want to have my business and I want to succeed and I want people to find me, but I don't want to play that game. And then I hired Phil as my first like business coach and marketing coach. And I'm like, I knew it. And it's like, I was kind of like playing around and I'm like, I knew that there was something that, and maybe that's why like I work for like, say we created like Sacred Business, right? Like that there is a way that you can do marketing that is aligned to your values and you're not treating people as like a pack of like bones and matters and chemicals that I know how to trigger fear and now they're gonna give me money. And then after him I got to know you, and I'm gonna be honest, like it's not that I know a lot of marketers, but both of you are just the two people that I'm like, if I need to, like, I only read your emails, Billy, about marketing, and I do sign up for other stuff, but I only read yours. And if I need any type of advice, it's from Phil, because I've never seen anyone talking about like selling and messaging and marketing and business like in this human way. Like this is not about money only. Yes, money has to play. It's important in the equation and it's part of success. But it's not like I don't do everything that I do just like to get the money results. So I truly appreciate like your perspective about like dignity and respecting people the way we are and, aligning to values. And I think this is a conversation that, well, it's extremely important because if we are not from the marketing world, we are being consumed by a game that we don't even have the choice, right? Like the way you said, like I don't have the agency to choose because we're playing with my brain, because we're playing with my chemicals in a way that I feel I need it. And at the end of the day, I don't. So I truly appreciate this perspective.
Yeah. And look, just to jump in there, and then I would love to hear your responsibility. But like, Billy's a super humble dude. But I also want to call out here. I think there's a lot of people that will hear this type of conversation, and they think, yeah, that's cool, and that's like an ideal state. But like, that doesn't make money. Like, I got to play the game that makes money. And I know for a fact, I've had my own experiences, but I know for a fact you've been behind some very large creators. I don't know, Tiago Forte is the one that most people will recognize his name, but um, I saw some recent numbers that he put up, and I know you've supported him a lot over the years. I mean, just to say like this different approach and not treating people without dignity, it can work. Like, so don't think if you're listening to this, like that we're just talking about this like kind of fantasy world. It's like, oh, like we can all kind of have these high values and morals and principles, but at the end of the day, I have to play that other game. And so yeah, I just wanted to share that as well. But yeah, I would love to hear more from you, Billy, of how you've seen that maybe play out in real life.
Yeah, it's so funny too, because again, I'm just a translator. I mean, I'm pointing the credit back at people 2,000-3,000 years ago, right? These are just old ideas that I'm reviving. So yeah, it works. If you think Aristotle had something worthwhile to say, then it works. Because what we're doing here is making an argument just like Aristotle talked about thousands of years ago, right? This is really just classic rhetoric. And we're just, again, born into the fish born into the water that don't know we're in water. We're just born into this very specific time of reductionism, scientism, behavioral economics, consumer psychology. I mean, the field of psychology is only 150 years old. It used to be part of philosophy, which is thousands of years old. And all the playbooks that we get happen to be from this new school, and we've just forgotten the old school. And I think a lot of us, myself included, I mean, look, I'm the worst offender of all this stuff, like reading all those books on how to hack psychology and all that. My bookshelf was full of them, and I really threw all those away. I mean, you look at some of the titles too. The Illusion of Choice is a very famous book on marketing. It's like, oh yeah, your customers think they have a choice, but that's just an illusion. They really don't. They're really just lab rats that we can program. It's like, come on, like. Right? And I'll also point out the people that write those books are not billionaires, by the way. Like, I don't think like all those behavioral psychologists, behavioral economics, like if this stuff works so well, why are they not all just crushing it? From what I've seen, they're not, right? So it's really just this one kind of weird school of thought that we were born into about hacking dopamine and all this stuff, and we think that's all there is. But no, there's a very ancient school of thought about making an argument, having really sound reasoning, presenting that reasoning through rhetoric, and backing it up with evidence. And so that's all I'm trying to do, is to show people like, hey, this has always existed. You just didn't know about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
cool.
and it's very important because I feel that at least like people that come to us and I'm sure some of your clients as well, like they're mostly very sensitive people and they feel that like me in my past, like they reject marketing. But then the work I think is like, it's not that we reject marketing, like we reject this game, but marketing in itself is neutral, right? It's just like energy, it's like money but if we can connect the message, connect the understanding of marketing, like for me, marketing became like inner work. Like just through the messaging work that I did with you and also like the work that I did with Phil, I got to know myself in ways and you guys reflected back to me stuff that I'm like, oh, I've never seen myself like this. So then I step into possibility because you mirror back like whatever, my power, my beauty, some of the stuff that I couldn't see it for myself. And this is marketing for me. And now I can, when I speak about what I do, and at the time when I was talking about what I was doing, it was coming from a much more clear space. And then people would resonate. And then I kept sharing. And now with Phil, like we keep sharing your message. And then if you're aligned with our values and you believe that, yes, you have something beautiful to share, you want people to get attracted to you, like we can walk together the path. But yeah, like it's sad that I see a lot of very talented people that reject marketing because this is like maybe but mostly people are sharing. And then they lose the opportunity to share their gifts because they reject the tool, thinking that the tool is the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would love to kind of throw another idea here, Billy, and get your thoughts. And then I would love after that to go. We have a really cool question in the chat. But one of the things is it's interesting, right? Because we're having this conversation, and I love that you said, "Hey, I've got all those books too," because I've got all those books too. I've read so much of this, and I've had to at certain points kind of relearn certain things and make decisions about what's right for me and how I want to show up. And what I want to say here is I'm thinking of, I can't remember exactly what it was, but I don't always get this right. There was an email I was just thinking like maybe 3 months ago, I sent an email, like a promo email, and we send a lot of emails, so I guess I'm not going to be able to get them all right just by that. But someone came back and basically was like, "Hey, I'm unsubscribing because I loved everything you guys are doing, but like I really am feeling like fear and shame in this." And I had to really like check myself and be like, "Hey, like, like where did that come from? Like, what was, and sometimes we're kind of moving on autopilot and this stuff comes through. And so I took it as a nice reflection moment for myself. But what I want to say about that is another thing I see with our clients is they want so much not to be associated with that energy or that approach, that this becomes the reason why they don't put themselves out there, because it's almost like, what if I get this wrong? Like kind of like I said, I got it wrong, and I'm sure I've gotten it wrong many other times. I know I have, right? But, how to play with that, right? Where this doesn't become the thing that kind of handicaps you or causes you to freeze from putting yourself out there, when you have kind of this resistance around marketing. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Billy, or not, but it's just something I've observed in myself and with people where they don't trust themselves because that influence can be so strong, because this is what we see, this is what we're taught. There's been so much of this in recent history.
No, I have a lot of thoughts on it. Yeah, I mean that's my whole
Cool.
work. That's all my work in
Yeah.
marketing is really providing a framework for people to follow because it's tough, right? Like those moral decisions where it's really clear. It's like, okay, there's the good moral decision. That's a little angel talking on this shoulder compared to the bad moral decision, that little devil talking on this shoulder, right? That one is easy. It's like, okay, you choose that one, right? The angel. But where it's between something, but it's often real life is messier than that. For example, if you have two competing goods, like this thing is good to be charitable, but this thing is good as well, maybe to be courageous, right? What if those two things are competing? Which one do I choose? So I think just recognizing that, Phil, like you did, because not everyone, I give you credit for that, not everyone recognizes that. Like that is that reflection moment that you talked about, where it's like, okay, well, what happened here? What was my intention? Because that's a big part of it.
Mhm.
How did that come across? Did my intention was it expressed as well as it could have been? Right. And so, you're not going to get it perfect, but the proper response is to kind of meditate upon it like you did. But I'm also trying to help people, like give people guidelines to follow. And that's this whole kind of foundational work. I mean, maybe what would help is if I created this kind of 3 steps that I think about when it comes to marketing that kind of bridge the gap from the moral layer, which is what we're talking about here, right? Moral and then into ethics. Ethics is more like how do I act? And that's what really trips people up, like your audience you were talking about. I don't want to act like one of them, right? I don't want to be one of those people down to the tactics. So I can walk through it if you're up for it.
Yeah. By all means, please.
So
Um,
the foundational axiom, like what I think could really help everyone here, society, especially business owners, marketers, is to start with that axiom that I mentioned earlier, which is humans are born with inherent dignity. And it's dignity that can't be earned. You don't need to earn it, and it can't be taken away. Now, how you get at that, right? That's a different conversation. For me, it's Christianity because we're made in the image of God. You can get to it from other paths as well, secular paths as well. But if we use that as our starting point, humans are born with inherent dignity, then that defines all our downstream ethics and actions. So then we say, okay, well then how do we speak to our audience, our prospects, our clients, our customers? Well, what we don't do is we don't do the psychology hacking thing and treat them like they're machines to be programmed or lab rats to be stimulated. Okay, so instead of appealing to your prospect's baser instincts, you appeal to their better nature. Okay, then that's all great, Billy, but then how do you do that practically? Well, that's where the whole argument thing comes in, which I know is kind of a combative term. I'm trying to redeem the term, and I think hopefully everyone sees now that the way I say like marketing is an argument is not a fight, but it's actually engaging with recognizing the person's agency, appealing to their better nature, and making an honest case to them that they can think about with their reasoning mind and freely choose. So through the act of making an argument, we check those boxes, right? We check the box on the human dignity thing, and we check the box on not treating them as if they're objects to be manipulated. So I think if people, hopefully that helps people to kind of think about that framework, and that'll help kind of give you guardrails when it comes to that tough question of how do I act in my business.
Yeah, thank you for that. And all words bright and beautiful. Thank you for being here and lighting up the chat with us here. I mean, I think you actually just kind of spoke to some of that, Billy, but I don't know if there's anything else you want to share. He or she or they mentioned what are the most important principles we need to apply in order to make our marketing more Christian specifically and more human. So I feel like in many ways you've been demonstrating this throughout the conversation. But if there's anything else that you feel called to share there, please do.
Yeah, and that's Josh in the chat. Josh has a great Substack as well. I know Josh. So thanks for the question. Yeah, so the principles to make it more Christian and human. I mean, I think the first thing is like understanding Christian values. And even if you're not Christian, I mean, most of us in the West follow Christian values. I mean, the idea that humans are born with inherent dignity was a novel idea. I mean, that was not a thing. Like you were born into a class. And if you were low class, you were not as valuable as the upper class. So that idea that no matter who you are and where you were born or when you were born, that as soon as you like become life, that you have inherent dignity, like that is a Christian idea. Now, a lot of people today, secular people, agree with that without necessarily having like the metaphysical foundation for that. I do think that's risky. I think that can be like sawing off the branch that you're sitting on if you try to strip that away from the foundation. But understanding those principles, there's a lot to it. We couldn't go into all of it here, but the idea of free will, right? If you just follow that one, like when you're going about your marketing, ask yourself, like, am I trying to restore people's agency, help them choose, or am I trying to bypass it? And I think that'll get you going in the right direction.
Yes. Cool. Yeah, I love that one. Agency. That's a question that I ask myself often. I often ask myself, am I holding the other in their highest until they can see it for themselves, and kind of trying to guide them in that direction. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. Really.
Sure.
So another one I wanted to ask you about, and I know we'll probably be coming up on time here soon, but I think we have time for this, and then I'd love to give you the opportunity to share more about your work for anyone who's not familiar. But I feel like another way that you and I are in some ways similar is we've worked like behind the scenes for a long time. In fact, until like kind of a few years ago, I was like completely kind of a behind the scenes guy. And this has been my first attempt at building a kind of a larger brand, which has been quite a fun journey. But so much of what I've observed with you has been relationship based. Like your ability to be successful and have the clients that you've had and the wins that you had has been through connection, through relationship. And I think that this is something that a lot of people struggle with online, and even people that feel actually quite good at this, like in real life, for example, it's like they get online and for some reason, like those rules go out the window and they're not quite sure how to show up and how to connect and relate to people. So I'm just curious what advice you might have for someone who wants to create meaningful, authentic connection online, to grow their business in service of their message, and what sort of actions might you suggest for them?
Yeah, the relationships are really important. That's something that like you don't see just because what you do see is all the public stuff. It's all the social media, the email list growth and everything. But very early on, when that ship was sinking on my beer brewing business and I was trying to get going with the marketing, the consulting side of things, I was very active in person. So I was flying all over the country. I was going to events, hugs and handshakes, not direct messages.
Hmm.
And so I think, especially in these days, I think the more that you can do in person and build those relationships. Uh, I remember I was at if there's anyone on here like who does freelancing, professional services, I remember I was at a conference with a buddy of mine, Jeremy, and he was a copywriter. It was a marketing conference, right? And we get into the elevator, and there was a woman there who everyone knew, like pretty big name entrepreneur, and he was introducing himself to her, and he goes, "Oh yeah," and she asked, "What do you do?" He goes, "Oh, I'm a copywriter," and she says, "Oh, I need a copywriter. Please give me your card." And I was like, imagine if he didn't go to the conference and he was trying to reach her with a Facebook ad. Like he didn't do anything. He got into the elevator, introduced himself, said, I'm a copywriter. And she later hired him and paid him tens of thousands of dollars for copywriting. Right. Like it's a good ROI. I'm trying to
Yeah,
do
it's
more of
fun.
that myself in San Diego here because so much of my work has been internationally over Zoom. But like I make a point now every month I go to an in-person meetup in San Diego.
Yeah, this is something I coach our clients on a lot. Is two things. Like one, basically just what you said. We've had people where we encourage them, like, "Hey, go out there and get yourself into a room." And I'm thinking of this one client who works in like healthcare fundraising in Boston, and I forget exactly what he said, but he was kind of like, "Really? I'm going to go to this event and set up a booth?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you're going to do that." And I remember he was like driving down us, I think it's Starro Drive if you've ever been in Boston, and he sends us this WhatsApp video. He was like so high, he's like driving. I was like, "Dude, you should put down your phone." But he's like, "Phil," he's like, "I was like, what did he say? Something like, I was like,
It
raw
was
meat
like
to a."
I felt like a meat for the piranhas.
Yeah, he's like, I couldn't believe it. They were just all like, I want to hire you. It's just like insane thing, Billy. Like if you just stayed in front of his computer, this wouldn't happen. And what I often tell people is if they flip things around, like everyone thinks like, okay, it's like audience building online first, and then like that's the top. But it's like, hey, what if you actually consider all this stuff? Like if you like with us, like if you have a regular content cadence, that's kind of like the thing that bolsters people's confidence when they meet you, right? So I often tell people like, hey, get this thing running, but then go put yourself in a room. And then when they're like, hey, let me check this Phil guy out or this Billy guy out, like what's he about? They enter into this like rich, like, ecosystem, and there's lots for them to explore, but it all starts in the room. And so I think it's really cool that you touched on that, because especially now with AI and all this stuff, I think it's always been important. It's always been a human need to be connected in person like that. But I think it's just going to become more and more important that we all stay, find ways to connect in real life like that. So,
Yeah, I mean, with my book, I co-authored that with my client Tiago Forte, and yeah, I didn't have a big audience, but when the book came out, Tiago sent it to his list of 50, 75,000
that's
people.
relationship right there. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And I put in the work. I remember the first time because we didn't live in the same towns, but he came into town. I had something going on. I could have been somewhere else, but I made a point to go meet up with Tiago when he was in town. And then we were both living in Southern California together, still a couple hours away. But I made a point as often as possible to drive up there to Long Beach and hang out with him. And I like hanging out with him, right? It's not like it's just strategic. Like he's an awesome dude, and it's more fun in person. But it also solidifies those relationships a heck of a lot faster. Like it's on like warp drive. One in person. Go to a conference with someone, like a 1 or 2 day conference with someone. You'll be closer than talking every day over Zoom for the next 12 months.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So yeah, just to kind of close, I'm going to try to squeeze one more in, like 30 seconds. Like I have to ask you, because you're a marketing guy. I like to ask people, like, we see a lot of the same kind of information and being kind of regurgitated and shared. But like, is there anything that just kind of comes to mind to you that's like kind of unexpected, something you haven't seen people talking about? Maybe not the fundamentals. I know you're big on the fundamentals, but just something you've been experimenting with that has, that's been having surprising results, or, something that someone might want to try related to growth.
Let's see. Well, I know a lot of people are talking about AI. I'm still going to talk about it, but maybe I'll put a fresh spin on it, because what you see usually is AI around content generation, writing emails, and things like that. But it can also be like I really like how it challenges you, and again, like this kind of argumentation based work. It can be tough. Your customers are going to be skeptical no matter what, and they're always asking these questions, and they're always trying to poke holes in things, right? So it can be kind of uncomfortable. Like the people who I work with, like or I say, okay, I'm going to be your sparring partner. I'm going to poke holes in your marketing. I mean, you guys went through that, right? It can be a little bit uncomfortable, but I think like you using these tools, making sure that they're not just yes men, because they can certainly be like that, like, oh yeah, you're awesome. So it takes doing it right, but I think having that kind of space where it can push back and poke holes, and then you fill those holes, it just gives you a lot more confidence in your ideas when you take something to the market.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing. Thank you for being generous with your time. Like, yeah, it's funny. We say we go 45 minutes on average, and sometimes we go a little bit longer, but I just feel like I could sit here and we could just talk about stuff all day. So yeah, thanks for being generous with your time. And, if anyone is, we'll send out a recap after this to our list. So if anyone's watching on the replay, or of course, if they've been here live and they're not familiar with your work, what would be kind of like a first best step you might recommend if they want to kind of explore a little bit more?
Yeah, it depends on what path you want to take. On the faith path here on Substack, as you mentioned, Phil, I have the new Substack, Fractal Faith. So you can check that out, see if you like it. On the marketing side, the place I would start is the manifesto, which really has that framework I talked about, the marketing worldview, the moral, the ethical, and the practical. We have a nice graphic that my illustrator Matt Strebe created for that, and that's at marketingisanargument.com.
Marketing is A or and?
A-N.
An argument, yeah.
Marketing
Marketing is an argument.com. Cool. Yeah, we'll make sure that gets into the recap, but I also just dropped it in the chat in case anyone wants it there. Yeah, Josh.
Hey,
I know
Josh.
Josh is a fan. He's a fan of your work for sure. Yeah.
I'm a fan of his. Yeah, good to see you.
Yeah, he's doing awesome stuff. So cool. Well, thank you, Billy, so much. And yeah, we're yeah, we're huge fans of your work, as I know we've said many times. So you've got allies in us if we can help in any way, and we'll keep spreading the word. We'd like to tell people about the 5 Lightbulbs. So
Thank you. That means a lot. Thanks for having me.
cool.
Thank you for being with us, and thank you everyone for watching.
Yeah. Till next
Thanks,
time.
everyone.
Till next
Bye.
time.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.